13 teams in the NFL have not won a Super Bowl. The only NFL team whose logo faces left. Which team are we talking about? You guessed it, talking about Philadelphia's own, the Eagles. 31 teams have been completed. Brendan Albert and Adrian Fedke here to wrap it all up, do the final team to do the season preview. Philadelphia Eagles, Adrian. I know you're thrilled about it.
You know, I am never letting you do an intro again because you pulled up the no Super Bowl argument. Oh my God, you did it. You freaking did it. You had to do it. I don't even want to do the show anymore.
It's not even an argument. It's just a statistic, man. I mean, look, that's just facts.
Statistic. We've won championships, damn it. 1960. Chuck Bednarik. Rest in peace, my love.
Hey, Chuck Bednarik is a Liberty High School grad. As a Liberty High School grad, I respect the nomination there, but you know what? It is what it is. However, here's the good news. Philadelphia fans, Eagles fans, you guys are moving in the right direction. The birds are flying up. Things are good. We're really excited to talk about the Eagles today.
Yeah, so while Chuck Bednarik is shining that 1960 championship ring in his grave, hopefully the Eagles will be able to add another ring within the next 5 to 10 years. And Carson Wentz gives the entire city of Philadelphia a lot of hope moving forward. So let's get into Wentz. A lot of weapons now. Alshon Jeffrey signed in the offseason. Torrey Smith signed in the offseason. Now, for Wentz, there's no excuses. What do you think? Is he the real deal?
You know what? Here's the thing. I love the Eagles' general management and overall front office has been a very, very aggressive. I would argue it's probably the most aggressive in the NFL. And you know what? For a rookie quarterback, that's exactly the situation I want to go into. A management situation who says, we are going to be aggressive. We're going to get you weapons. Went out and signed Alshon Jeffrey, a guy who undoubtedly is absolutely a top 10 level talent. Loved that pick. We knew that last year Wentz struggled to throw the ball down the field, didn't have a lot of yards per completion. What do? Go get one of the best 9-route runners in the NFL, and Torrey Smith. Go ahead and sign him. Obviously, we know a very good tight end situation there, probably 3 deep there in Philadelphia. Nice situation. I love what the Eagles are doing. They're giving Wentz all the options. They're taking the training wheels off, and they say, okay, it's time to go. We've invested money around you. It's time to go. It's time to start spinning the ball.
That third preseason game was a perfect illustration of what to expect. The deep in route from Jeffrey off play action. That was easy pitch and catch. Easy 17 yards. When's the last time 17 yards came that easily? I know it was only a preseason game, but a sign of things to come. He runs the quick slant very well. Gets inside position using that body of his. So 3rd and 7, you can rely on Alshon Jeffrey to move the sticks. The Eagles haven't had anybody that you could rely on 3rd and 7 the last 5 years. Deep ball. We saw Torrey Smith catch the touchdown. So you can kind of work it underneath, all that stuff. Boom. Beat him deep over the top. When's the last time the Eagles had somebody that could go deep? So this is very, very exciting. It looks great so far. I'm just hoping it can translate into the regular season. But I really think Alshon Jeffrey and Carson Wentz, the chemistry that they've already built, and I think that they're a perfect tandem for each other.
Oh, without a question. I mean, realistically, the second year of a NFL quarterback typically is when we start getting a really good idea of exactly what the skill set's going to be. And you know what? In Philadelphia, they took all of the receivers and they dumped them out of the box and said, okay, let's restart. So OTAs this past year, preseason this past year, honestly, I would have argued this is the most important OTAs and the most important preseason for any NFL quarterback. Carson Wentz there, man. You got two new starting receivers. We still know Nelson Aguilar has still far from exceeded expectations. Carson's learning more and more of the playbook. Big things in Philly are moving forward. The Eagles can have a large expectations, as we know, Philadelphia fans. We got a large appetite. We want to win. We want to win now. We expect to win. Very, very exciting times to have all those weapons around Carson Wentz.
This is what I'm excited about in terms of this tandem. Carson Wentz likes to escape the pocket. He likes to move out. And he likes to look downfield and just kind of heave it a little bit. I don't know if there's anybody in the NFL that can win a 50-50 ball like Alshon Jeffrey can. The way he uses his body, he's got some of the strongest hands in the league. His body control is exceptional. So I've given this example a lot. Last year against the Giants, where Wentz rolled out to his right, he's looking for somebody, he throws the ball up, and it's Bryce Treggs who's not coming back for the ball, and the ball's easily intercepted. We're not going to see that this year. Alshon Jeffrey is going to go up and he's going to make plays. And his catch radius is unbelievable. I cannot wait, Brandon. I can't wait.
You know, I remember a couple of years ago when we were watching the Bears having all the success with Cutler and Brandon Marshall and young Alshon Jeffrey. I remember watching an interview that they asked Brandon Marshall, what's it like watching Alshon Jeffrey's catch radius? Now, Brandon Marshall is another one of those big body receivers who he can go up and get at the highest point. And even he was blown away. He always said, goes, it's not a 50-50 ball when the ball's thrown to Alshon. He called them Alshon balls. He goes, because he's going to go up and get it. And you know what? That's what Alshon Jeffrey brings you. A lot of what he was exactly what Mike Evans is now, and also what Bryant was coming out of Clemson and now being drafted by the Chargers. Those are all the same type of physical skill set. Alshon obviously has had a couple years of injury, kind of a couple setbacks there in Chicago. But you know what? Realistically, with everything else in Chicago, I don't really not really completely concerned about Alshon there. I love this moving forward for the Eagles. I'm very, very excited to see how it looks with Carson.
Yeah. All right, now let's get into a Doug Peterson discussion. So we love Wentz, but maybe Doug not so much. But all right. So I like to play the role of basically being the most unbiased guy on YouTube. So I hate Doug Peterson, but I've also tried to tell you guys the other side of the ledger. Because like 99% of people in Philadelphia do not like Doug Peterson. So the same excuses that you used for Wentz last year, you can also use for Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson was also a rookie head coach. He really doesn't have a lot of even coordinator experience in the NFL. So he's never been a head coach. He didn't have weapons last year either, so that did not expand his playbook. He's got this humongous playbook, but you would have thought last year that it was as small as Chip Kelly's, the way he was calling plays. It was basically the same shit over and over again. So for Doug Peterson, the same thing with Wentz. There are no excuses anymore. You better open up that playbook now that you have weapons.
Without a question here. Without a question. I mean, I'm not a big fan of his either. Honestly, I think he's a fine head coach in the NFL. I don't love him. I think realistically, this could be a guy on the hot seat this year, quietly. He could quietly be a hot seat guy. I don't think he'll get fired this year. I think he'll probably get fired in 2 years if we don't see the Eagles really moving in the right direction, because realistically, the Giants' roster, for example, most of their best players are probably on the down. I don't think a lot of the Giants guys moving in the right direction up. When we look in Washington, probably moving more towards the down, especially because it sounds like Kirk Cousins is not going to be there in 2 years from now. Dallas' roster, obviously a lot of youth, so probably moving up. So realistically, Eagles are in the same spot. Their roster is a lot of youth, a lot of guys moving in the right direction. So if we don't see the Eagles winning a championship as far as their division in the next 2 years, I could see a head coaching change here. Now, I'm going to throw it out there because I know how much the Eagles love some big names. So I got two of them for you. Maybe not this year, but 2 years. Sean Payton, he's a guy who potentially could be on the hot seat there in New Orleans. But after he won the Super Bowl, hasn't really done much there in New Orleans, to be fair. And then everyone's always talked about it. And he's slowly started to say he's interested to come out and coach again. John Gruden, man. I mean, if you had the opportunity to get either one of those guys, Adrian, wouldn't you jump all over both of them?
Potentially, yeah. I don't know about Gruden per se because, like, he hasn't coached in a while. So I don't know if I'd be a little reluctant with him. But because the game has changed a lot now. Since when's the last time he coached, Daryl? 2008?
Yeah. And
it's been like a decade.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a minute. But honestly, the game hasn't changed as much as people think. Like, you know what? Yeah, maybe they pass the ball more. But you know what? Most of those concepts are the exact same. It's just added window dressing. Instead of, 10 years ago, there were a lot more 21 personnel with fullback, running back, and tight end. Now there's more 11. But you know what? I mean, okay, so the fullback, he used to run an out. So you know what they're doing now? The slot receiver runs the out. It hasn't changed as much as people really think it does. It just is window dressing. It looks like it on the surface, but when you sit down and put a playbook in front of you or you look at coverages in front of you, things aren't changing that much. So I'm not really worried that Gruden couldn't come back in and be successful.
Yeah, it just the whole Gibbs situation comes into play. Like that's what I think of now. Gibbs comes back to the Redskins, didn't work out for them too well. So you could be right. I mean, I'd take Gruden over Doug Peterson. I wanted anybody over Doug Peterson. That hire I didn't like at all. I wanted Adam Gase. Adam Gase was the guy. I was sucking his cock. I was licking his fucking balls. I was doing all that, and he didn't come to Philly, and I was pissed. He goes to Miami. They go 10-6, and now we're stuck with Doug.
So what I've learned here is Adrian has a very big fanhood of Adam Gase.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I love his bald.
All right. So we're just going to – let's just
I have a thing for bald guys. Watch out, Brendan.
All right. Let's transition quickly here because I'm uncomfortable.
Let's get into the Ronald Darby trade. All right. So I made a video about 2-3 weeks ago saying that this Ronald Darby trade has made the Eagles the best team in the NFC East. And I'm going to make my argument before Brendan speaks because Brendan doesn't believe in that statement. So the Eagles last year really, really struggled with the quick three-step passing game. And when you're able to get the ball out within 3 seconds, that gaudy defensive line, it doesn't matter if you have Reggie White on your team, you're not going to get to the quarterback. If that quarterback's getting the ball out, quick three-step drop, get it out, and get completion after completion. So Packers game, perfect example last year. Every 3rd and 8, quick slant, it didn't even matter. Rodgers was getting the ball out. So Darby, this is something he does very well, jumping the underneath stuff. He's not great on double moves, but jumping underneath stuff, I think that's going to help out the defensive line tremendously. So everything's going to get set in motion now. It's going to allow for the defensive line to pressure the quarterback more because in my rankings, all right, before the Ronald Darby trade, my top-ranked cornerback on the Eagles was Jalen Mills, and he was my 85th ranked corner. Now, all of a sudden, you add Ronald Darby, he's my 28th ranked corner. So that's a significant jump. But I'll let Brendan talk now, and I do agree with you because I don't think Ronald Darby is a number 1 corner.
Well, here's what every Eagles fan needs to kind of take a deep breath here. All right, so let's take a step back and let's talk about what the trade exactly was. Jordan Matthews, a guy realistically they weren't going to re-sign for Ronald Darby. On the surface there, awesome trade, fantastic, value through the roof. You bring in an instant starter at corner for realistically your 2nd or 3rd receiver for Jordan Matthews.
They also gave up a 3rd-round pick too.
And that's where I don't love the trade. And that's why I have a problem because that 3rd-round pick, realistically, that's probably going to be a top 100 pick next year. Okay? I don't love that situation. And I say that because you know what? Your 3rd-round pick last year is going to be a guy who's probably going to be a starting corner for you this year in Rasul Douglas. So realistically, you essentially are trading 2 potential starters for 1 potential starter who isn't an elite level player at his position. I think Ronald Darby's a top 25 corner in the NFL. He's very good. Adrian, you're 100% right. For what the Eagles had in the defensive backs and the corners, massive jump. Awesome value. I love it. I agree with you 100%. However, unless he's a number 1 corner in the NFL, which Ronald Darby isn't, just because you're a number 1 corner on your team doesn't mean you're number 1 corner in the NFL. Case in point. So if that theory is true, then Talib is not a number 1 corner in the NFL because he's not a number 1 corner in Denver. That's obviously not the case. All right, so Denver obviously has 2 starting corners in the NFL who are number 1s. Patriots, 2 starting corners in the NFL who are number 1s. Eagles, Darby's a very, very good too, but if he was that good, he would have been number 1. It wouldn't have been Gilmore in Buffalo. So I like Darby. I don't want to diminish him, but I think we also need to realize that he is not going to be a guy who's going to line up against Odell Beckham, Pryor, Des Bryant, and just shut him down. Now, Adrian, I do agree with you. Does it make the Eagles much better? No question in my mind. However, for me to say that that automatically would make them a better team. The receiving cores that the Eagles would need to play in division would need to be receiving cores like the Jets, the Niners, and the Ravens. They're playing against damn good receiving cores in the Giants, the Cowboys, and the Redskins. Those three receiving cores probably are all three top 10 receiving cores in the NFL. So I like Ronald Darby. I like the trade. I like bringing him in. But it's when you trade that draft pick that I don't love it. And I think about it this way too. How did the Eagles go out and they get Wentz? They traded an abundance of picks to get him. So realistically, those several picks, the Eagles have done a great job at bundling picks, trading up, and getting a great value player. I love the idea of giving the general management in Philadelphia multiple picks to be aggressive with, more so than trading up and getting a guy who you're probably going to have to way overpay once his contract comes up. That's just realistically what's going to happen with Ronald Darby. So on the surface, does it make the Eagles a better team? Without a question. Does it make him a better franchise in 5 years? I'm not so sure I'm ready to say that.
See, I think if you the third round pick, I would have done it 100 out of 100 times because of the glaring need in the secondary. And I think Darby is good enough that he can be a really good number 2 next to Sidney Jones. I basically see them using that third round pick on Ronald Darby, even though you only have 2 years instead of 5 that you would have on a normal rookie contract. So you're basically spending a third rounder for 2 years worth of player. I do think they're going to re-sign him. Sure, he might get overpaid, but I think the tandem of a Sidney Jones, if he pans out and as good as I think he is, so if you have Sidney Jones next to Ronald Darby, that's a great duo. And, you know, the Eagles have been trying to get cornerbacks ever since Lito Shepherd, Sheldon Brown have been out of town. So I would have done this trade. I'm cool with the trade. A third-round pick. I mean, I wanted a cornerback desperately in here. And sure, you know, like the third round is a little much. Even I said that. You know, it is a little steep. But considering the situation and, you know, just kind of the dire situation that they were in, I would have done it 100 out of 100 times.
I think that's fair, Adrian. You know, if we're talking about the upside of Sidney Jones, I'm 100% with you. Sidney Jones absolutely has that upside to be a number 1 corner, and if he does come out and become that number 1 corner, obviously in 2 years, he's not going to be it this year, but in 2 years, if Sidney Jones does become a number 1 corner, and you have Ronald Darby as the other corner, absolutely it's worth it. However, we're throwing ifs around pretty heavily here. I'm just more of a mindset of, you know, hey, give me as many draft picks as possible and let me keep taking picks on the draft. Let me keep giving shots because realistically, the NFL draft is just a complete gamble. Every draft pick is a gamble. Sure, some guys have probably a smaller window of error than others, and that's why they're first-round picks versus fifth-round picks. But to me, I'm more of the mindset of give me as many draft picks as possible. I'm going to keep seeing what's going on, a la trust the process. That's what the Eagles are doing. That's what the Sixers are doing. Eagles going a little bit of a different manner, saying, hey, let me go get proven camaraderie, guys who are playing in the NFL. And I agree with that. I think there's 2 train of thoughts. You can win either way. I'm just personally more a fan of the other way. So it's just a personal preference there.
Well, in your defense, I will say this, all right? I'm sick of the Dream Team shit. I'm sick of this. Howie Roseman said during a press conference 2 years ago that he has changed, that he's a different person. Well, from what I've seen, you've made 5 trades since the start of training camp. You're still the same goddamn guy, all right? So we're still seeing the same kind of Dream Team bullshit that we've always seen. Draft and develop. That's how you win the NFL. I mean, we talked about it with our Green Bay preview show. Ted Thompson never does anything. He never makes any moves. Howie Roseman has made more moves in the last month than what Ted Thompson has done during his entire tenure in Green Bay. So sometimes it's better off to just like do nothing sometimes. But Howie just like can't help himself. He's done 5 things since the start of training camp. So I'm with you in that sense. I'm tired of trading for players. I want to draft and develop them.
I mean, like I said, there's just 2 school of thoughts. I mean, realistically, Howie's one of the most, if not the most aggressive general manager in the NFL.
I hate it.
And here's the thing, you know, like I've talked with a lot of Packers fans who have said, like, you know, it would be really nice if we actually spent money in free agency and not just drafted another, you know, average slot receiver. Why not go out and sign someone? So, I mean, there's two school of thoughts. I understand both of them. Obviously, Howie, he gets a lot of the splash points, gets a lot of the excitement. But at the same time, look, I mean, the Packers have been successful. Seattle had a big stretch where they did the same thing, and now Seattle's kind of changing their model to be a little more aggressive and go out and get players that already are known. I understand how he does in Philly. I'm just more a fan of getting a lot of draft picks. That's just my personal preference. But I understand the fans who say, hey, let me trade the draft picks for known camaraderies. Let me go and get guys.
The time to be aggressive is when you're on the verge of winning a Super Bowl.
Great.
Kind of like Denver Broncos a couple years ago when they traded for Peyton Manning. They got DeMarcus Ware. They went and signed all those guys. What else they did? They did a bunch of shit, and they went and won a Super Bowl. So that's when you want to be aggressive. If you want to build a franchise, you draft and develop. But when you're ready to win a Super Bowl, that's when you attack free agency. That's my school of thought.
Adrian, that's a home run take right there, man, because you're 100% right. Because realistically, let's kind of spin this all forward. In the next year to two, let's say Alshon hits, and I think he will. I think Alshon's going to be a stud. Alshon, definitely, you're going to pay him heavily, and you know what? He's worth every penny. I'm not saying he isn't. Be prepared to pay him. All right, so you're going to pay him there. If Torrey Smith hits, realistically, Torrey Smith's on 3 consecutive one-year deals. So right there, probably between Torrey Smith and Alshon, you'll probably spend, I don't know, 60 to 65 million. Alshon's probably going to get 50 million himself if he hits, which I think he will. And then you add in Darby. Corners get paid very, very heavily. And Adrian, you agreed. He's probably going to get overpaid. Corners get overpaid in the market. So right there, boom, boom, boom. High payments for 2 guys and Torrey Smith, rotational guy. And then obviously have some other contracts coming up, like in the linebacker position. Quickly, the money's adding up versus say, hey, let's go draft pick routes and we'll get guys under, rookie minimums and hopefully we see it pays out. So I'm with you, Adrian. If the Eagles were in a situation where they were a Super Bowl contender, I don't think they are, then I'd be okay with them trading and spending big money. But because they're not, go the youth movement. I don't think they need to mortgage the franchise like the Jets and the Bills, but continue to do what you do. I mean, there's a reason you've hit on a lot of offensive linemen and defensive linemen in the quarterback position because you drafted those guys.
Now let's remember, Ronald Darby is 23. It's not like you're trading for a 28-year-old cornerback. You're trading for a 23-year-old. So that's another reason why I'm okay with it. I'm okay with giving away the 3rd-round pick because you're getting a guy back that's 23. Like I believe who else is? They have 2 guys that are 23, 21 in their secondary. So if Rasul Douglas, Sidney Jones, Jalen Mills, and Ronald Darby, if they all pan out, you have youth, and you can have a great cornerback quartet for 5 to 10 years potentially.
Without a doubt, Adrian. I mean, it's similar to what we talked about with the Cowgirls. They did a great job there of drafting a lot of youth in the corner position and seeing if they can hit with any of them. Very similar to what the Eagles are doing. However, here's the difference. I know Darby's young, but his contract is not of a rookie, where the rookie, they have those 3 to 5 year deals. Darby's really only 2. So that's kind of more of my hesitancy. I love the draft, the trade. Okay, I'm not knocking it. But I wish the Eagles wouldn't have had to trade that 3rd. And if they did, I wish they would have been able to get a 5th or even a 6th round pick back in exchange.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I was nitpicking. I'm like, I wish it was a 4th instead of the 3rd because they have 3 4ths, but they gave up the 3rd. But I get it. But that's the reason why I don't want the Eagles signing any more players or trading for anybody else. I mean, that's because you still got Eagles fans that want to do more. And I'm like, no. There's no more to do. No, keep what you have. You have to re-sign guys eventually. So that's the thing that people forget is you have to use that money to re-sign people. Just because they have cap money right now, it's going to roll over, and you can sign your Alshon Jeffries of the world. Because there are people that wanted Joe Hayden. I want nothing to do with Joe Hayden. But okay, let's move on. This is off topic now. Schedule. Predictions. All right, so normally we do our predictions near the end of the show. We'll do it now. Okay, so I have the Eagles going 9-7 and winning the NFC East. I have the Eagles and Giants finishing at 9-7. But as we know, the Giants are a bitch. So we're going to beat them in the tiebreaker. So the Eagles win the NFC East at 9-7, and they become the 4th seed, and then they're just going to lose in the wild card round.
Okay. I don't completely disagree with you up until that point where you said they were going to win the division. That's where we're speaking a little
Well, you
different.
got the Giants at 10-6.
I sure do. So let's take a peek here at what I have for the Eagles. I have the Eagles going 9-7. Now I'm going to highlight 2 games or 3 games I really want to highlight right off the jump here, okay? Carolina, this is a tough one for 2 reasons here. One, not only is obviously going to Carolina tough because obviously they're a good team, realistically, this game could decide a tiebreaker for the wild card in the NFC East.
Absolutely.
Okay? So this game is very, very, very important. The other one I highlighted here, I wasn't confident in this one. I gave the Eagles the win over the Broncos because of, as you talked about it too, Adrian, when you bring in Ronald Darby, that helps. But realistically, the Broncos, their offense has 2 elite-level playmakers in Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas. But after that, there's nothing in Denver that scares me. So realistically, this could be a game that, hey, if Demaryius Thomas or Emmanuel Sanders get loose and they get going and you can't stop them, you're in trouble there. I don't love anything else on the offense, but we know that the Broncos defense is damn good. So it's not a stretch to see Carson Wentz struggles here, but you know what? He's going to go against 2 Pro Bowl level corners, both of which I think are top 5 level guys, and in my opinion, the best edge rusher in Von Miller. That's a damn good defense. So realistically, I gave the Eagles the win here, but I could see him losing. Now here's the one I know Eagles fans are probably laughing out loud, pointing and saying, "Wow, he thinks." Okay. Now here's why I think this is hilarious. Last year, did you Eagles fans?
I think it's hilarious too.
Did you guys think you were going to lose to the Bengals last year? What about lose to the Lions last year? Do you think that was going to happen?
Actually, I predicted.
Here's my point. All right. Realistically, every NFL team blows at least 1 or 2 games that you look back on, and fans and teams and players and Vegas and all of those people who know the game, they say, how the hell did we lose to them? Every team in the NFL does at least once or twice a year. Almost every single team, minus like the Patriots kind of thing. Here's the other reason I have them losing this game. Going to Seattle, then going back out west to LA, and then you go to the Giants, and then you have the Raiders. This is a nasty stretch here in Philly. This is a tough stretch. Going 2 games on the West Coast. Now, I assume the Eagles will probably stay on the West Coast after Seattle and just stay there till they play in LA. The Eagles have a history. You need to look at this. Last 3 years, the Eagles have blown games against teams they should have won when they played a divisional rival the next week. When they lost to the Lions, when they lost to the Bengals, both times they lost to teams that they should have beaten, probably because their mindset was on the next week when they were playing teams in the division. So realistically, do I think on paper the Eagles are better than the Rams? Abso-freaking-lutely. But you know what? When we are predicting schedules, we're not predicting 1 game at a time. That's not the point. The point is to look at the stretch, look at the other opponents, and look and try to project how are things going to unravel. I think these 2 games are tough. I think the Eagles are going to lose them both. And you know what? Realistically, if you highlight these 3 weeks right here, and I tell you the Eagles, you have to win 2 of them, every Eagles fan should pick, I'd rather beat the Seahawks and the Giants than beat the Rams, because realistically, the Seahawks, I think they're going to win the division, but if they don't for some reason, that's a wild card situation you need to split. And then obviously you have to beat the Giants because realistically, I think that's your biggest contender for the division more than the Cowboys. So realistically, I have the Eagles going 9-7, but I think there are 3 games here that could go either way. Carolina, Denver, and honestly, thinking of the Raiders. That Raiders team, if those DBs aren't ready to roll, Derek Carr, Crabtree, Cooper, they'll light you up, no problem, real quick. So I have the Eagles going 9-7, a team right there on the wild card situation. Depending on what they do against the Panthers, is a very real situation if they get the wild card berth or not.
Now, when you bring that schedule up, can I talk over top of it? Or
yep, let me throw it up really quick here, Adrian.
Yeah, put that back up there.
Yep, there you go.
Okay. Hold on, I don't see it. Okay, there we go. All right, so the difference is that I have. I don't think we have any chance of beating the Chiefs. Interesting that you have them beating the Chiefs, but I do have Eagles beating the Redskins to start the season. I think that freaking game to start the year is unbelievable. Unbelievably important to win that game, to set the precedent and set the tone for the entire season. I agree with you with the Chargers. Somebody laughed at me when I've said that before. Panthers, I'm with you all the way down. Now, Denver is the one game I am 100% in agreement with you. That is the win that I had originally as a loss. That's the Ronald Darby impact there, I think, potentially. Okay, so Emmanuel Sanders, Demarius Thomas, they would have had no shot to stop those guys if Jalen Mills would have been your number one. So that's a game where I went going 8-8 to 9-7. So that's where it is there. Now it's interesting you bring up the Rams trap game. That Bears game too could be a trap too. If you're playing Dallas off the bye and you go into Dallas and you beat them, you could lose to the Bears the next week, considering you have the Seahawks right after that as well. So the trap thing is always interesting. But those were the games that I wanted to comment on was the Broncos, Redskins, and Chiefs.
I agree with you, Adrian. And you know what? Also, this Chargers team, look, you know what Philip Rivers loves to do? Throw the ball deep to big receivers. And you know what? The Chargers, they might have the best dunk contest receivers in the NFL. All those receivers the Chargers have are big body guys who can elevate, go up and get it. Two really good tight ends, Keenan Allen work in the middle, Melvin Gordon. It's a damn good offense. And you know what? If your DBs don't come ready to play after that flight out to LA, and as we know, when you go coast to coast, those are tough. That's a game you realistically could win. I have them losing it because I don't think that the Eagles are going to be able to put up points the way the Chargers are. And quietly, that Chargers defense is damn good. So to me, I think the Chargers defense is much better than the Eagles, probably than most people are going to give them credit for. And then also, I don't think that the Eagles DBs are going to be completely ready, at least early in the season, to play against a Hall of Famer like Philip Rivers with really good receivers. I just think it turns into a track meet, and I think the Chargers ink them out. But realistically, I could see the Eagles doing it. Like I said, 9-7, I think is realistic. I think the Eagles this year, your window is probably anywhere from 7 wins to 10 wins. I think that's a realistic window to expect.
I think that's fair. That's about that's 100% correct there. All right, so position by position, we talked about Carson Wentz. Let's get into the running back situation. They kept 5 running backs on the roster. Now, I don't know if you've watched any of the preseason because I know you're in Vegas, and I don't know if you've seen any of the Eagles stuff. But Corey Clement had a really strong preseason. He was undrafted out of Wisconsin. And Donnell Pumphrey, the pick that they traded up for in the 4th round, has been struggling mightily. So they've talked about potentially putting him on this phantom IR. And in order to put him on the phantom IR, you have to put him initially on the roster. Because if you put him on the IR before you put him on the roster, he's subject to waivers. So they put him on the roster because they didn't want him to put him on waivers because they were scared that somebody would claim him. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do. Are you familiar with this situation right now, Brendan?
I am. And realistically, I didn't love the Pumphrey pick at all. In fact, I hated it. I hated the fact
Live.
I hated the fact that the Eagles traded up to get him because, and Adrian, and maybe you and me are biased because there was a guy on the board that both you and me said, hey, he's a sleeper and we loved him in Marlon Mack. I mean, we both loved Marlon Mack. And I think if you and me gave us the option, you said, hey, you can either have Darrell Pumphrey or Marlon Mack going into the draft. I know I damn well would have said Marlon Mack, no question. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I had him ranked top 5 in my running back rankings.
So realistically, let's think about this then. If we're both in the same agreement, then the Eagles then traded up to get a guy that we both didn't like as much as another option on the table. So I didn't love the Pumphrey pick. Honestly, you know what? If you put him down and he gets claimed off waivers, okay. I don't think you're losing anything there. My problem I had with keeping all these running backs is the Eagles only kept 8 offensive linemen. We talked about it with the Cowboys show, not a lot of depth. The Eagles decided, hey, we think that 8 offensive linemen is going to get it done. To me in the NFL, never. And I got a young quarterback. No. Give me more offensive linemen. Give me more beef. Give me more protection for my young guy. I want that every single time over a 5th running back who realistically, if he ends up getting 20 carries as a rookie, I think that's a good thing for Pumphrey. I don't love the draft pick. I hated the fact that they kept him instead of an offensive lineman. I just think it's a bad move there for Philly.
Yeah. Couple things. Not only were there better running backs on the board, Jamal Williams was there too, but I understand, okay, you wanted to go for the more receiving type because Darren Sproles is going to retire. Well, Marlon Mack can do that. Jamal Williams can't, but Marlon Mack can. And I hated that they didn't take Marlon Mack. That was the thing. But not only that, you still had Desmond King on the board. You still had DeMonte Casey on the board. There were cornerbacks galore that were on the board that you could have taken, and they didn't. I know you went with one in the second, third round, but I would have tripled up. I don't care. It's as good as those corners were. So, yeah. All right. To say something about the 8 offensive linemen. Now, if they do go with this Phantom IR situation, and Pumphrey is put on IR or whatever, I think they will add another offensive lineman. Dylan Gordon got cut by that, but he was terrible during the preseason. There was no doubt about it. He was getting beat left and right. He was getting whipped. So I think they're going to put Pumphrey on the IR, and I think they will sign an offensive lineman eventually. But that's my guess.
I think you're right, Adrian. I think the other one that realistically the Eagles should circle is Alex Boone, who was another guard that was a surprising cut from the Vikings. I think that would be a nice signing there, too, to play opposite.
I would.
Yeah, I mean, he could come in. And realistically, maybe he doesn't start right away, but I think he'd be a good starter there at left guard.
Malo has not looked good during the preseason. They moved away from Allen Barbary. They traded him for a 7th-round pick, and he hasn't looked good. He was a 3rd-round pick for them last year. Haven't seen much.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would much rather bring in a left guard to start opposite of Brandon Brooks there playing the right side. Man, the Eagles already have a nasty old line. Hey, keep getting better there, man. Let me get Carson Wentz as much time in the pocket as possible.
Yeah. All right, rest of the running backs. So LeGarrette Blount, what do you think he's going to do? What do you expect from him?
All right, Blount forced trauma. All right, so I do like LeGarrette Blount here, okay? I think realistic expectations for him is probably somewhere in the 170 carries, very similar to what Ryan Matthews put up. I think he'll probably get a couple more touchdowns. I mean, he is a little more of a red zone heavier guy, and realistically, that was always the concern with Ryan Matthews was he can't hang on to the ball. So why the hell would I want to give him the ball when I have at least 3 points in a red zone situation? I'm worried he's going to fumble the freaking thing. So yeah, I like that move there. And I can argue concern for LeGarrette Blount just as much as I could argue excitement for LeGarrette Blount, because my first concern is LeGarrette Blount is a physical back, downhill back, power style, get his shoulders square, run north and south, gain 3 to 4 in the first and second quarter, and all of a sudden he's breaking tackles, and now he's going for 25 in the fourth quarter because he's a physical runner. So that's the pro, because the Eagles didn't have that in the roster at all. That's what I love about it. The con is I don't love the fact that the Eagles do so much gun work that LeGarrette Blount's first step is lateral, not vertical going north and south. So for physical backs, hey, man, I want your first step going up and getting some ground right off the jump. So that's my concern. But realistically, I like the signing for the Eagles because you know what? He brings a different dimension that really the Philadelphia Eagles didn't have in the running back spot.
Yeah, what's going to happen is he's going to be basically your inside guy and your outside guy for the outside sweeps and outside zone runs is going to be like Wendell Smallwood. And I think that's kind of the route that they're going to go. With Pumphrey, they originally wanted to play him in the slot and in pony sets. So basically the pony set is just he and Sproles in the backfield together. Now, I have this question for you because I brought this point up with Pumphrey. Is it possible that his mind is overloaded with information because of everywhere that Doug Peterson has him lined up? He's in the slot. He's in the backfield. He's in these pony sets. Is his head spinning because Doug Peterson has him doing too much too soon?
That's absolutely very possible, and if not, it's probably likely. Because I think about this. Pumphrey's, the first thing is when he came from San Diego State, they're one of the few teams who still runs 21 personnel almost exclusively. They run so much heavy offense, true power. It's very, very simple. And even, I mean, you don't have to go back and watch all of San Diego State's games. Go back and watch the San Diego State bowl game when they were playing out here in Vegas. They pretty much ran power almost every single running play. They just ran simple king right power. And that's what they consistently did. So Pumphrey's, as successful as he was successful because San Diego State wanted to be a boxing type of offense. Throw the jab, throw the jab, throw the jab, throw the jab. Keep running power, keep running power, keep running power. Boom, all of a sudden he hits it. Now he's gone for 70. That's really what Pumphrey was, super consistent in that. Now, all this stuff that, people say, oh, well, he's Darren Sproles 2.0. Honestly, I think that's just a lazy comparison because he's a short running back. Realistically, Pumphrey's his entire career at San Diego State, he didn't even have 100 receptions. He didn't really return kicks and punts the way people think he did. Yes, he's a small running back. He's shifty and all that, but he didn't have the reception numbers. He doesn't have the special teams numbers. So it's hard for me to really think, oh, yeah, he's definitely just going to come in and replace Darren Sproles. I don't see it at all. I really don't think that this is a good option there in Philadelphia.
I think Doug Peterson is him wrong, and I don't think Doug Peterson knows what he does well. He is not a slot receiver. He doesn't have the quickness and suddenness coming out of his breaks. And watching the tape at San Diego State, I don't know what the fuck Doug was seeing because he cannot run a route. He can't. He can't do it. He just can't. He's not Darren Sproles. And you can teach him for 2 to 3 years. I don't know if it's going to be enough. So, and I think he's a guy, as crazy as it sounds, he's a guy you got to run in between the tackles. Because when he ran in between the tackles this preseason, he was actually kind of somewhat successful. And the reason for that is that's what he's used to. San Diego State, they played power football. They did not cater their offense to Donnell Pumphrey. It's not like the Stanford situation where they ran like more outside zone stuff and let Christian McCaffrey get in space. It wasn't like that. It was he ran in between the tackles, and when it wasn't there, he bounced it to the outside, and that's something that he did very, very well. But here in Philly so far, we're seeing him do all these different things that he just doesn't look like he's ready for, and doesn't look like he really knows what to do.
I'm with you, Adrian. I mean, realistically, here's my thought. If you want a slot receiver, go sign Jeremy Curley. You got cut by the Niners. Don't play around and keep saying, oh, well, we're going to make Pumphrey into a slot receiver. I don't care. Go sign a slot receiver. I want Carson Wentz to be surrounded with guys who are knowing what they're doing, not guys that are figuring out on the fly. No, man, I don't love this Pumphrey situation at all. You know what? Realistically, Adrian, I agree with you 100%. His head probably is spinning with this situation because he was never asked to do all this versatility in San Diego State. So why am I supposed to think he's going to be able to do it now? Nah, not a fan of it. Just move on from it. Let's stop being cute.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, receivers. Okay, so we talked about Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith. Nelson Aguilar is somebody they've been hyping up all freaking off season. By God. So I'll say this about it. I think he's better in the slot because he's quick and shifty after the catch. Okay, but do I really think he's going to have this career renaissance? No.
I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, how can I be confident? Like realistically, that's kind of my mindset. Give me how can I be confident in him? He's shown me nothing. And you know what? You can tell me all day about how he's been super productive in off season and OTAs and how he's looked quick and explosive. And you know what? I can show you a million different beat writers pieces of saying the exact same things about Kevin White and about this receiver and that receiver. It happens all the time. That's what beat writers are paid to do. Realistically, guys, beat writers are paid to get fans excited, to get them to be more engaged, to get them to buy tickets, to increase fan experience. And then realistically, when that guy doesn't do well, you know what the beat writer does? Turns around and writes, "Look how bad he is. What I told you so." Again, the next guy. And it's like, this is what beat writers do. Don't fall for propaganda. That's what media is, realistically. I don't have any faith in him. I think realistically, I think his best chance of success is in the slot. That's the good news. But realistically, I don't think Torrey Smith's a number two starting receiver in the NFL at this point in his career either. I think both him and Torrey Smith are probably best at slot receivers running a smaller window of routes. So who's the number 2 receiver if Jordan Matthews just left?
Yeah. How much have you seen of Mac Hollins? Have you seen any of him?
That's where it gets interesting because Hollins is now the guy all of a sudden that it's like, you know what? Maybe he becomes the number 2 receiver in Philly. Now, realistically, Mac Hollins' expectations for him, very low, okay? I think realistically you look at him, if he gets 40 receptions and 2 or 3 touchdowns, that's on par. And why did I pull those numbers out? That's what Dorial Green-Beckham had last year. And I think realistically, Mac Hollins, his rookie year, I think that's a fairly, a nice goal for him to have. So maybe does that solidify him as the number 2 starter there in Philadelphia? Not necessarily. But as a rookie, it does show some promise. I'd love to see what Mac Hollins can do. I hope he can win the number 2 job, the opposite side of Alshon, because I think really for the Eagles fans, that's a really good situation. If he can win that, now you can kind of take a deep breath and you can say, great, we don't have to put lofty expectation on Nelson Aguilar to be number 2. He can be the slot. Same thing with Torrey Smith. We can let him be the slot. That's a very good opportunity for Eagles fans to level expectations for Nelson and Torrey Smith.
All right. I don't know how to word this question, but maybe you'll kind of get where I'm going. So Hollins, now granted, in the first game, he did that touchdown that he had, it was against the first teamers. But a lot of what he's been doing has been against second and third stringers. So how much stock do you put into that and what you're seeing? Should we realistically expect him to contribute during his rookie year if he's doing that against second and third stringers, or should we temper our expectations? What do you think?
Temper expectations. And I say that for 2 reasons. Not necessarily just because he's doing it against second and third stringers. He's also doing it against very, very simple coverages. It's very, very simple. Yes. Middle field open, middle field close type of mindset. It's not necessarily thinking about where do I need to sit down in zone coverage. It's not necessarily as much development stuff. This all goes back to my earlier comment I made, guys, about this offseason, the OTAs was crucial. Like I said, I really think this OTAs was the most important for the Eagles than any team in the NFL. So I think we cannot get too excited for Mac Hollins, and that's why I said you should kind of write it down now. 40 receptions, 2 touchdowns. Those are realistic expectations for Mac Hollins in his first year.
Yeah. All right. Zach Ertz. Are you a Zach Ertz fan?
I am a Zach Ertz fan. I think he's a poor man's Jordan Reed. He's a poor man's move tight end. So I like what Zach Ertz does. Don't expect him to make blocks. Just don't do it, okay? If you're thinking, hey, he's going to be a crash down guy and he's going to be able to hook the backer or he's going to be able to crash down and take a D end, you're setting yourself up for failure. That's just not his skill set. That's why Brent Selleck is still on the roster, realistically. But move tight end, I like Zach Ertz. Guys, tight end, 70 reception, maybe a handful of touchdowns. He's probably going to see less touchdowns in the past because of development, hopefully, of Alshon Jeffrey. But I like Zach Ertz. I think he's probably a top 10 tight end in the NFL.
That's funny that you say that because, we have arguments all the time on this channel because I don't think he is a top 10 tight end because of his lack of blocking and all that. And I don't think he's there with, because you bring up the Jordan Reed thing. Well, Jordan Reed is so far ahead of him in terms of pass catching. I think that it's okay that he can't block as well. But Jordan Reed actually blocks better than you might think. Zach Ertz can't block at all. He's one of the worst blocking tight ends.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, I think for me, the reason I also don't have as much of a problem with Zach Ertz is because the Eagles are 3 deep at tight end. And they have a guy who's their number 2 who is very, very opposite of his skill set in Brent Selleck. So they still have a guy who can do a lot of the things that Zach Ertz maybe doesn't excel at. They've done a nice job at kind of bandaging his weaknesses with still having a nice backup there for him. So for me, I mean, I like Zach Ertz as a top 10 tight end, but he's towards the bottom. I don't like him more than guys like Delaney Walker, for example, or Kyle Rudolph, for example. But I certainly will take him, over a lot of teams in the NFL's tight end options.
I don't know where my notebook is, Brendan. I'd go read off my – I think I have him at 11 or 12. I think that's where I have him. I don't have it off top. Damn it. Sorry, guys. I don't have the spiral notebook.
I think that's fair, though, Adrian. That 11 to 12 ranking. I think that's fair. I mean, obviously, look, the guys like Olsen, Kelsey, and Gronk, they're solidified up there. Then you have your guys like Jordan Reed. I like Delaney Walker a ton, so I have him there. Then you add in a guy like Kyle Rudolph, Tyler Eifert. If he can stay healthy, he's certainly above him. And then you're starting to get into your world of, Hunter Henrys and C.J. Fedorowitz's and some tight ends like that. Oh, obviously Jimmy Graham. I'm sorry, Jimmy Graham. He's up in that top 3 mix.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Austin Hooper is up there, getting there too.
I think I would still take Zach Ertz over, Austin.
I would. I I agree with that. But Hooper's getting up there. Hunter Henry, though, I think is a stud. I think Hunter Henry's better than Zach Ertz.
I mean, it's hard for me to say because honestly, I think their skill set's the exact same. The same things that Hunter Henry excels at is what Zach Ertz does. Same thing they struggle at is the same. But it's very similar. The only difference is the Chargers run a lot of 12 personnel with 2 tight ends, getting Antonio Gates in the game too.
Henry just is more explosive as a pass catcher. But see, you know what the problem is with Zach Ertz and what we complain about here in Philly? He cannot make anybody miss. He cannot run through tackles. It's always 5-yard hitch, and that's what it is. He gets tackled immediately. He doesn't make anybody miss ever.
Well, and that's the thing because he's not the physical, demanding, massive tight end like Kelsey or Gronk or Witten, who's going to make the 5-yard catch with a linebacker draped onto him, but they're just physical specimen that they're able to shed the tackle and get another 3 to 5 more yards. But he's also not the explosive elite level athlete like a young Antonio Gates or Jordan Reed, where he's able to make guys miss in space either. Like I said, he's kind of right there, and that's why I say he's a fine starting tight end in the NFL. Do I think he's a Pro Bowler? I mean, I think his numbers are probably going to show he's a Pro Bowler more than I think his skill set is, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does make sense. Because the numbers, I think, are inflated. And I forget what it was last year, but 40% of his production came in December last year when the Eagles were already out of the playoff mix. So that's what he's known for. He's known for producing late in the year when it doesn't really matter. So that's what it is with him. All right. My ball, Zach Ertz now. So let's talk about the offensive line. So we just did the Dallas Cowboys show, and interesting because you think the Eagles have a top 3 offensive line, and I love your theory on it because it starts with the tackles, and the Eagles have themselves a great pair of tackles.
That's exactly my mindset, guys. My mindset is when I value offensive line, I'm valuing the left tackle most important. And then in there, it's probably a combo between center and right tackle is probably the next most important. Then the guards are probably the least important position, typically for me in the NFL. So because of my personal value, I think the Eagles actually have the second best offensive line. I look at it there. You have a stud in Lane Johnson at right tackle, maybe the most athletic tackle in the NFL. He's up there with a couple other guys in the division too, but he's very, very good. Jason Peters, still a very, very good left tackle. Yeah, he's getting a little long in the tooth, and you know what? He is starting to struggle a little more with speed, and that's common. So don't be surprised in the next couple of years if you see him all of a sudden kick into offensive guard one day. Brandon Brooks has turned to be a very nice signing. He's looked to have a big jump in his career, been a road grader there at guard. Kelsey, very solid starter at center. And then you have a little bit of a battle there at the left guard position. You know, Chance Warmack was a guy who was drafted highly coming out. He was a road grader, very similar to what Brandon Brooks' skill set is. But like I said, if I'm saying you only have one position really to battle with, I think that puts you as a top 3 offensive line. Now, personally, for me, I think the Titans are just the best offensive line in the NFL. I love everything the Titans have. All 5 guys are studs, so I think the Titans. I think the Eagles have a better offensive line than Dallas, but I think it's hair razor thin. Those 2 offensive lines are both right there.
By the way, Brendan is not an Eagles fan, so for him to say that the Eagles' offensive line is better than Dallas, it's not homerish. All right. Now I have them 6th. I think the interior of the offensive line, I don't think is there for them to be top 3. But I do agree with you. The tackles probably second best in the NFL behind the Titans. Would you agree with that? Just off the top of my head, I'm trying to think who else is better.
Washington, I guess you could say, is probably in that mix too. But yeah.
Actually, Washington's better. Washington, I'll take Morgan Moses and Trent Williams over ours.
I think I personally would probably take the Eagles over Washington, but I think that's fair of that comparison. But realistically, depth is something the Eagles decide not to opt in. Like I talked about, only bringing 8 active guys to that 53 roster, I don't love that. I mean, again, I'd rather go with 9 instead of one more running back. So to me, I mentioned his name already. I'm going to bring it up again. Bring in Alex Boone to be a left guard. It gives you more depth there in the offensive line. I just think one more offensive lineman, a nice veteran move from some of those guys who got cut today, would be a very, very wise decision to do in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's funny because they kept 8 offensive linemen. They traded Allen Barbery. They traded Matt Tobin. So they traded their depth away. Not that Matt Tobin was any good, but I did think Allen Barbery was solid, and I would have kept him for depth instead of adding that 7th round pick.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that too because realistically, that 7th round pick, you're probably going to get a similar skill set. I don't think necessarily you're going to get a stud. I know I kind of contradicting myself, but to me, really after round 5, that's pretty much where I start really caring about draft picks, truthfully.
Yeah.
And I say this
All
too
right.
because usually after round 5, the value of trading those draft picks is usually pretty low anyway. Usually it's the first 5 rounds are guys that usually can get like a starter in the NFL for. 6th and 7th rounders, you're not really getting a starter. So for me, just keep it back up and see what happens.
Yeah, the general rule of thumb is like 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round, you get a starter within the next within 2 to 3 years, right? That's like the thought process. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, defensive line. I have the Eagles ranked as the number 1 4-3 defensive line in the NFL. I wish I had my spiral notebook so I could talk about it. We can kind of debate that. But Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Timmy Jernigan, Chris Long, and then the depth too with Derek Barnett. I mean, oh my God. I think they've got depth. They're going to pressure the quarterback for days. I love this D-line.
Well, really, when you look at Jim Schwartz's defense, he's always been get pressure with 4 and have 7 guys in coverage. That's always what he's been. Now, that said, we've come a long way for the Eagles since Coach Johnson, where he would, I'm going to blitz 7 and I'm going to drop 4. I mean,
yeah. Complete opposite.
I mean, like literally, there couldn't be 2 more opposite schools of thought. So it is a night and day transformation from the Eagles I remember watching as a kid to the Eagles of watching in the 2000s, just going after the 4. But those front 4, damn good front 4. I really like the front 4 here with the Eagles. So we start inside. Fletcher Cox is a stud. I have him the 2nd highest defensive tackle in the NFL behind Ndamukong Suh. I'm a big Fletcher Cox fan, so love that. Bring in Timmy Jernigan. So let me talk about this. So I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan. I know they do exist, believe it or not, but I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan, okay? So Timmy Jernigan was a guy who was playing really out of his system abilities in a 3-4 defensive end in Baltimore. Now he's coming in to be a 4-3 inside linebacker. I think he's going to be very, very successful. Very similar to
tackle. That's a tackle.
That's a tackle. Yeah. Very similar to what Sheldon Richardson's going to do in Seattle, moving from a 3-4 defensive end, coming into a defensive tackle in the 4-3. I think Timmy Jernigan's going to be very successful. So I like that option there as your other inside. I'm a big Brandon Graham fan. Now, I know a lot of people in Philadelphia hate him. And I think Brandon Graham's one of those people, either you're all in or you're all out against him, and that's fine. But I like Brandon Graham. So I think that's a very good defensive end situation. And then you have the other starting defensive end for the Eagles is going to be Vinny Curry to start. But it's not necessarily Vinny Curry. It's Vinny Curry's contract. Because of that contract he has, the Eagles are going to keep giving him opportunities because, look, the Eagles are going to have a very hard time trading him with what the money he has. He's on a bad contract, okay? So he's going to be the starter there in Philly because the Eagles want to say, hey, we get some value out of him. But realistically, he's on a very, very short lease. It won't be long before Barnett steps in and he becomes a starter there. And then all of a sudden you have Vinny Curry, and he can be a rotational guy to play inside a couple times if you need him to in that defensive tackle. And then Chris Long's a nice vet to add in there at the defensive end position. I like a lot what the defensive line there is in Philly.
Here's the thing about Philly and the defensive line. You really don't have starters at the end because they rotate so much. So Derek Barnett not being a starter per se, I mean, the snaps are going to be kind of similar to what Vinny Curry is going to get. So over time, yes, Derek Barnett will be the starter, but because of the contract, Vinny Curry will be your starter week 1. But the snaps, it'll be similar, and I'm with you on Timmy Jernigan. The scheme change, this fits his skill set perfectly. He gets into the backfield, and Jim Schwartz has always done a tremendous job with defensive tackles, creating penetration. I mean, we've seen it. Albert Hainsworth is a perfect example. He just takes these guys and he molds them, And this is going to be a dangerous defensive line. Vinny Curry has had a solid preseason, but his thing has always been stopping the run. And that's why he's never been a complete defensive end. Why? I don't know why they gave him all that money. Sure, he can rush the quarterback, but you can't stop the run. You can't be a complete defensive end making all that money if you can't stop the run.
100% agree, Adrian. And that's why I think Vinny Curry, his future is a rotational 4-3 D tackle as a pass rush specialist in the 4-3 system. However, his contract is structured so highly that he has so much money that he has the opportunity to kind of be a big time player because the Eagles can't really move on from him. And what do you want to do? Put the $30 million on the bench? Because you know what? As much as people don't love Vinny Curry, I would probably still take Vinny Curry at this point in his career over Chris Long. Not because, and that's not a shot at Chris Long. Chris Long is just much older and just further past his prime in the NFL. But I don't think there's a big drop off there. However, the contract tells me it's different. The contract tells me Vinny Curry is probably like a 17-time better player because that's how much more money he's getting than Chris Long. But you're right, Adrian. They're gonna rotate guys in that defensive front four, and we're gonna see a ton of that. And that's what's going to be really helpful too for Barnett is try to get him in situations where it's third and long. I think realistic expectations for Barnett, probably say 4 to 6 sacks, maybe like 30 to no, I'll take it back. Probably like 40 to 50 tackles, I think is realistic for Barnett. And if he gets those numbers, very, very productive. I'm a big Barnett fan. I really like the draft pick a lot. I think he's very, very talented. I think he will excel in Jim Schwartz's system.
Yeah, he basically played wide 9 at Tennessee, and now you're going to play wide 9 here in Philadelphia, lining up as a pass rusher. So I think it fits his skill set tremendously. And I'll ask you this question then. Now, you say 4 to 6 sacks. The single season Eagles mark for a rookie for sacks is 6. Will he pass that?
Who was Reggie White? Reggie White wasn't the rookie for the Eagles. Yeah, he was.
Like yeah, it wasn't. Reggie White isn't the record holder. It's Derek Burgess.
Oh, there's a name from the past. I don't think he'll get 6. I don't think he'll get 6. I think 4 to 6 is kind of the ceiling for him. If he hits past 6, every Eagles fan should go out and buy a Barnett jersey because he's going to be a freaking stud. If he hits past 6, honestly, I don't think he'll get more than that though. But what I like a lot about him is he's coming to the NFL with multiple pass rush moves. He's not someone like Harris was coming out of Mizzou. He was a speed rush specialist, and that was really all he had there. Barnett's a guy who's shown pro-ready multiple move sets. Harris, obviously, his value was being a much better athletic fit than Barnett. But Barnett in the 4-3, you're not necessarily asking your DNs to be these unbelievable stand-up freaks because you're asking them to put their hand in the dirt. So Barnett obviously has a lot of value. And I think, honestly, when you look at the Eagles offseason, the trade of Timmy Jarnigan and the big draft pick there at Barnett, what that tells me is Jim Schwartz is very highly regarded in the Eagles front office because when he says, hey, I like this guy, and they go out and draft him, they really believe in Jim Schwartz. So there's a lot of value in him and his system of getting 4 guys after the quarterback. And realistically, I think you're probably 5 or 6 guys deep who I'm pretty confident can get after the quarterback on third down. So I really do like what the Eagles have done in the front 4.
Yeah. I think the initial instinct when you hear 6 sacks is like, oh, yeah, sure he's going to get it. 6 sacks? Because 6 doesn't really seem like a high number, but 6 sacks is actually a lot in the NFL.
No, you're 100% right, Adrian. I mean, most rookies probably get around 4. Good rookies get around 4. I mean, Malik Collins, for example, last year for Dallas, he got 5, and that was a good year. I mean, Joey Bosa had everyone, if you think about it, people were like, Joey Bosa is killing the NFL. He had 9.5, which is, again, you sound on the surface like it's not a lot, but that's hard. Now, obviously, Bosa also got 9.5 with less games played too, but I think
12. Incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, 4 to 6, I think that's a realistic expectation to have for Barnett.
All right, let's move on to the linebacking core. I think Jordan Hicks, when we go through the underrated players on our list, Jordan Hicks will be my guy. Oh, my. He's a stud. He's already a complete linebacker, I think, inside because he can cover and he can tackle. What are your thoughts on Jordan Hicks?
I agree with you. I mean, my actual underrated guy was going to be Nigel, so I don't think we're in complete disagreement there. I think the linebacker crew is a very good linebacking crew in the NFL. I don't think there's any elite level guys here. Honestly, when I look here at Kendricks, he kind of is what he is. I mean, Jordan Hicks led the team last year with 5 interceptions, which is pretty rare for a linebacker to do. So that's a nice kind of added bonus when your linebacker is able to cause interceptions. So that's nice. Nigel's been a guy who's been consistent around the 80 tackle mark. Honestly, for me, when we were sitting there at the draft, Adrian, I kind of was wondering, hey, do the Eagles take Reuben Foster here? Because obviously Reuben Foster was sliding. My guess is he slid because of medical issues, and I assume every team who decided not to pick him probably had serious redshirt medical issues with him. So I could understand why the Eagles didn't do it. But for a linebacker crew, it's a very good one. I like what they have here in Philly.
Yeah, and here's what I'll say about Michael Kendricks. He was a guy that I was hoping was going to get traded during the preseason. It's funny. I just talked about how I hate Howie and all the trades that he makes, but Kendricks, he doesn't really fit what Jim Schwartz likes to do. They're in nickel like 60 to 70% of the time. So that takes a linebacker off the field. And the linebacker that they always took off the field was Michael Kendricks because he's not as good in coverage as the other guys. And he's best as a 3-4 inside linebacker at blitzer because that's what he does. He's got a lot of speed, he times it well, and he goes sideline to sideline. As an outside linebacker in this 4-3, even though he had an exceptional preseason, it doesn't necessarily fill his skill set.
I agree with you. And that's another reason why I thought Reuben Foster was going to be the pick, because I thought he would have replaced Kendricks. I mean, I don't think Kendricks is a terrible player. I think he's a fine starter. I agree with you. I think he's playing a little bit of out of position. But realistically, it's a better linebacker crew than a lot of teams in the NFL. So my big challenge for the Eagles will just be making sure, hey, look, we know you have the front four to get after the quarterback on third down. So do yourselves a favor and make sure you win on first and second down against the run. That's going to be my big challenge for that front seven. If they can do that, look out, because that defense is going to be very, very good, at least in the front seven anyway.
Yeah, and getting Kendricks for a second, I mean, you talked about it. We've talked about it. Pressure with the front four, drop back 7. So you're not asking Kendricks to be that blitzing type of linebacker, which is what he excels at. That's what he does well. But you're not asking him to do that here in Philly. So his greatest strength, you're not asking him to do.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, and then in that situation, as you said it, his value maybe isn't necessarily as utilized there in Philadelphia. Yeah. So if he gets traded at some point in time, so be it. Michael Kendricks, though, in the meantime, he's fine. I mean, I think he's a fine starting outside linebacker in the NFL. He's not going to be a Pro Bowl guy, accept that. But a starter, whatever. It's okay. You could have worse, realistically, is what I'm looking at.
Yeah. All right, we did spend a lot of time on the secondary already, but I guess we could talk about it a little bit further. I want to get your thoughts on Sidney Jones because you're the draft expert. Were you as high on Sidney Jones as I was?
Big time. I was a big Sidney Jones fan. Sidney Jones, I had him as a top 10 level talent when he came out. I think his kind of pro comparison, because a lot of people like doing this, was Xavier Rhodes there in Minnesota. Very similar to his teammate who also got drafted, Kevin King, by the Packers. I think their skill set's very, very similar. Big physical corners, able to really body guys down the field. I like Sidney Jones a lot.
Dude, the quickness that he possesses, his feet, the way he turns his hips, it's so fluid and effortless. He's going to be really, really good. And he has top 10 talent, I think, in the NFL to be a top 10 cornerback in this league.
100% agree with you. 100% agree that he's very much there. So the Eagles pick with him in the second round, good pick. I liked it. Honestly, my thing was, and I was standing next to one of my buddies in the draft in Philly, and when we started seeing Lattimore slide from Ohio State, I turned to him and he said, he goes, why is he sliding? You think it's a medical thing? And I said, there's been no medical concerns. He's just sliding, and that happens sometimes in the NFL. And I said, but here's the deal. If you're the Eagles, don't fuck around. Trade up right now. Find a way to go get Lattimore because he was the best corner in the NFL. Obviously, they opted not to do it. and they ended up getting Barnett, which I think was a good pick. I don't want to diminish Barnett. I just would rather have Lattimore. So when Sidney Jones was sitting there in the second, you know what? Maybe his health issues was something that's a concern. I know some people say, hey, maybe he wasn't worthy of a second-round pick because of that. I'm okay with that. But realistically, you weren't going to get anyone with his skill set after where he was. So I completely understood why they drafted him. Give him the year. Expectations, give him a full year. If he plays week 14, 15, 16, hey, that's great. But give him a full year to physically get healthy moving forward. I've never seen a player ever lose so much because of his pro day workout than what he did. And that's just so unfortunate. It's such a freak incident. Unfortunately, I will say, as a defensive back, that injury he has is very, very scary because
it is
so much.
Yeah, no, for sure. I want to ask this question too. All right, so when you have an injury like that and somebody slides, maybe this is dumb to ask, but why do they slide so much?
Well, here's the thing. And when you go into the draft room, realistically, usually most of these guys are razor thin between this option and that option. So realistically, a lot of times you're looking to see, okay, what can we do to make an excuse to take this guy or that guy? I'll use an example. Laramie Tunsil, okay? He slid because of that gas mask situation. Newsflash, NFL players smoke weed. College kids smoke weed. It happens, all right? So, like, if you realistically said, oh, we're not taking Laramie Tunsil because he smoked weed and makes bad decisions, okay, realistically, that's not a reason to skip on his talent. The real reason is, he's the Ravens. They said, you know what? We're really split between you and Ronnie Stanley, and we just think Ronnie Stanley is, maybe a little bit not as talented, but maybe we'll use this as a reason to take Ronnie Stanley. That's what happened. There's a large reason why a lot of these guys slide. Now, the other thing is, it also depends on where the injury is. Like, Achilles is crucial for a defensive back, okay? Shoulder is crucial for linebackers. Both of those affected guys like Reuben Foster sliding and also affected Sidney Jones sliding. If it's something like, like a hip pointer or it's something more of like an elbow, those are a little more lenient, for players. But defensive players, shoulders, especially for guys who play in the front seven, is very, very important. Anything really knee and below is very, very important. I would say hip and below is very important for the back four. So it's really about where the injury is, Adrian, and how fresh the injury is too. Unfortunately, you can't get more of a fresh injury than exactly what happened with Sidney Jones. I mean, his happened several weeks before the draft, which is such a freak situation. But him sliding, Eagles taking him, no problems there. You get a great value. It's very similar to what the Cowboys did with Jalen Smith. They said, hey, look, top 10 talent here is possible, but we know he's going to fall for the second round when he's there. Yeah, let's take him. We'll take the upside. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, I question would be too. It's like, all right, so if you know that this guy is going to be that good, why do you wait to take him? So why does he slide so much? Is it really because of what you said?
I think let's look at some of the other teams who, needed corners. I mean, look, I'll use the Raiders for example. The Raiders drafted Garyon Conley, a guy who was under rape allegations, which has since been dropped. But Garyon Conley and Sidney Jones, skill set, I don't think there's that much difference there. But realistically, the Raiders are in a Super Bowl win now mindset, so there's no way they were going to take Sidney Jones. They'll take Conley, that guy that can potentially help put them over the top. So I think that's kind of something too. Especially when you start to getting past the top 10 and you get into like that mid round, 15 to 20. Those are teams who are realistically say, you know what, we're probably 1 or 2 years away. So we'll just take the best player available, even if he is hurt, we'll kind of develop. But when you get to that back half and you start getting to teams like the Raiders, the Cowboys, the Seahawks, Packers, Patriots, teams that are Super Bowl contenders, they're not going to take a guy who they have to wait a year. They're going to take a guy who's going to help them win right now. So essentially, if you're a guy who's an injury and you're watching your stock slip, you pretty much know after the 20s, you almost can consider yourself going to be a second-round pick because realistically, those guys aren't going to take you. And here's the other thing for Philadelphia, I'll tell you. Realistically, I don't think you're going to be a top 10 pick next year. So you're not going to get a top 10 athlete like Sidney Jones is next year. So realistically, where they got him, I get it. Take the risk, man, because you're not going to be bad enough to get a good enough corner like that next year.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. I had a follow-up question. I forget what I was going to ask. So I'll just ask you about Rasul Douglas. Do you like him?
Rasul Douglas is another guy we talked about, big, long guy from West Virginia. Now, I talked about this. Obviously, quarterbacks, then corners, and then tight ends, to me, are the three positions who have the biggest learning curve in the
Mhm.
NFL. Okay. Now, let's get really specific here for Rasul Douglas. Okay. Rasul Douglas, third round pick, came out of West Virginia, right? I'm not crazy, Adrian. That's where he went to school, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So
Yep.
West Virginia, Big 12. So what we know about the Big 12? Spread, throw the ball all over the field. Teams running a lot of 10 personnel. Like think about Texas Tech, Baylor, heck, even West Virginia, Oklahoma State. A lot of those teams are throwing the ball over the field. What do we always say about spread receivers? Spread receivers don't run full route trees. Hey, if you're the X
Yep.
receiver, you're running a post, you're running a go, maybe a dig, maybe a comeback. If you're inside, you're running a slant, you're running a hitch, you're running a curl, quick out, wheel. So because of that, if you're a corner and I'm playing Texas Tech, and the next week I play Oklahoma State, and the next week I play Baylor, and I line up as the outside corner on the number one receiver, I know he's probably running 5 routes. So mentally, I am prepared for 5 routes. I am
Yeah.
recognizing 5 routes. And now I'm coming to the NFL, and these guys can run any route. That's a big learning curve for corners, and especially in conferences like the Big 12, where you're not seeing pro-style offense. You're not seeing pro-style expectations. I like to use Florida. I like to use Ohio State, Bama. Those are teams who play in conferences where we see a little more pro-style situations. So in turn, those corners are a little more football IQ ready for the NFL. The transition is a little easier for them. So Rasul Douglas, I think he's going to struggle early. And I think that's something you just need to kind of expect there as Eagles fans, because intellectually, he's never been around a system like this that he's going to see in the NFL. But he was a third-round pick. And realistically, he's probably going to ask to be an early-time starter for you in Philadelphia.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say about Rasul Douglas, because like a lot of what you said is like kind of the arguments that I've made. He also played in a 3-3-5 system, so a different type of system that he played at West Virginia than he's going to see in the NFL. Obviously, 3-3-5 is like almost like a gimmick type. So he played in a lot more zone than a normal cornerback would. So he wasn't in a lot of man-to-man. We saw it here in training camp and the preseason. Weeks 2, 3, and 4, we've seen progression from Rasul Douglas, and it's been steady, and it's coming along. So it was slow to start, as I predicted, but we're starting to see some progress now, and it's coming along as pretty much like I expected. Like some guys are like, yeah, he's going to start week 1. No, he's not going to start week 1. But you just got to be patient with him. There's talent there. You just got to be patient with him.
I agree with you. I think Patrick Robinson probably is the guy who gets to start week 1. And then I think you look at maybe Jalen Mills probably gets a little more opportunity in the slot. And then eventually you see Rasul Douglas start to battle a little more with Patrick Robinson for that opposite spot of Ronald Darby. Now, of course, Ronald Darby gets hurt. Guess what? All 3 of those guys are starting. But I agree with you, Adrian. I think that's a fair kind of way to watch them grow. I think Jalen Mills, another guy I kind of circle. I think the nice thing for him is he now gets to move and spend more time in the slot. That's really where he spent most of his time being successful in college. So I think that's good for him. He's also played a lot of free safety. Now, here's the reason I bring that up. The average age of the 3 realistic starters of the safeties in Philadelphia is 29 years young. So they're not exactly a young defensive secondary in terms of safeties. Obviously, we know Malcolm Jenkins. He's still a very, very good player. Rodney McLeod led the team in tackles last year. He's coming off a career year, best year. He's getting older too. And they went out inside Corey Graham, guy who's bounced around the league, most notably with the Buffalo Bills. But he's an older guy too. So there's not a lot of youth there in the safety situation. So Jalen Mills, I think him playing in the slot is a great thing for his career. Maybe down the line we see him move back to safety, but I think his future is going to be, at the slot receiver or slot corner position.
Yeah, future he's going to be in the slot, but for this season he's going to be the starter outside with Ronald Darby. That's where they're going to go. And Patrick Robinson and Dexter McDougal, the guy that they just got from the Jets when they traded Terrence Brooks, those two guys are either one of those guys is going to be the slot corner. So Patrick Robinson will be interesting to see because he freaking stunk to start training camp, but he's come along nicely, and we haven't heard about him as much. And I think being the nickel guy now being kind of lost in the shadows, so to speak. He's not the number one guy. All the tension's not on him anymore. So I think maybe he can be all right in the slot.
I agree with you, Adrian. And I think honestly, I think the Eagles honestly are hoping if anyone really kind of plays better, it's Patrick Robinson, so they can throw him to the fire and be the number 2 corner. Because realistically, let's call a spade a spade. If you're from Philadelphia and you're a fan of any Philadelphia fans, you got to admit we're pretty tough on our players. All right, so
yeah.
Realistically, I'd rather, if I'm in a management position, I'd rather an old vet like Patrick Robinson be called a bust and a failure and a loser and a bad player than my younger guys like Jalen Mills and a younger guy like Rasul Douglas. I'd rather them come along slowly, let them build confidence. So inevitably, when they let up a big play and Philly fans get on them, they have a little more confidence in themselves to say, you know what, I'm good. At a young point in your career, and I've always said this, corners are not cocky. They talk the most, but they're not cocky. They're the most self-conscious. Because think about it this way. Defenses really don't huddle anymore. They look to the sideline, they get the call, and they go into it. So a corner, you're pretty much spending your entire time standing outside the field by yourself. You're not talking to anyone. When that ball's put in the air, realistically, that ball belongs to the receiver more than it belongs to you. So the last thing I ever want my corner to do is have doubt in his head. So what does this do? These corners become very, very self-conscious. So now what do? They start talking junk. They're not talking junk to make the receiver afraid. They're talking junk because they're trying to make themselves feel confident in themselves. So when that ball's in the air, they're not thinking, oh shit, here we go again, I'm going to blow it. They're thinking this ball's mine. So it's a big mental thing for the corner. So that's why young corners, they typically struggle. And that's why, as Eagles fans, you should really hope that Patrick Robinson starts at the number 2 corner position. Not because he's ever going to take the job and run with it, but because it's going to allow Jalen Mills and Rasul Douglas more time to grow slowly into those roles.
All right, let's move on to hot seat underrated fantasy. So who's on the hot seat in Philly, Brendan?
I think quietly it's going to be head coach here. I think the team who I don't think he's going to be fired. But if he struggles again, if we see another 7-9 season, let's be honest. No one likes to put more lighter fluid on a seat than the Philadelphia Eagles fans in the NFL. Let's just be real. That's what Philadelphia loves to do, and I get it. I completely understand it. I'm not knocking it. I'm not mocking it. I understand why it happens. So I think if Coach Peterson doesn't see projection and we don't see a winning record, even 8-8 isn't going to cut it. If we don't see a winning record, Coach Peterson's on the hot seat here quietly.
I agree with you. I don't even want him as my head coach. So if they can him, good. But I get it. I understand you got to give him time and you got to let things play out. I just never wanted him. Adam Gase was my coach. Adam Gase is my coach, dude.
Yeah, Adam Gates was a lot more than your coach, the way you described him earlier in minute 7.
Oh, yeah.
So the other guy I'll say, and this is an obvious one, is Nelson Aguilar. I mean, that's just a complete obvious one. And I think his hot seat just got hotter with the fact that Philip Dorsett just got traded. So now if I'm Howie, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, okay, well, Philip Dorsett realistically was a guy drafted very similar, has struggled almost the exact same statistics, almost the exact same way. And Philip Dorsett was able to go out and get traded for a young quarterback. If I'm Howie, I'm starting to make some calls and saying, okay, well, if that's what Dorsett went for, I don't think it's a stretch to say Nelson can go for a very similar value.
I got a hot seat guy, Jason Kelce. Now, I don't think he's a fit for the scheme. He's only 285 pounds. He needs to be in a zone blocking scheme where you're asking him to kind of move around. When you're asking him to push people backwards, that's not his game. So last year, it's crazy because it's like Doug Peterson likes to cater his offense to the strengths of his players. And the strength of the offensive line is to actually move along the perimeter and do the sweep play and the outside zone type of stuff. But if you're going to have a guy like LeGarrette Blount come in here, well, he's going to want to run up the middle. And you have Jason Kelsey who can't push people backwards. So I thought he was a guy that was going to get traded all offseason. I didn't think he was going to be our starting center. I think Stefan Wisniewski is actually a better fit for the team, and he should probably be starting in to be honest with you. But even though Kelsey is a better center per se, but he's not a fit for this scheme, and I don't know why he's still here.
Yeah, I don't agree. I don't disagree with you. I mean, I don't think there's a big drop off there between Siswooski as a backup center. So if there's trade value out there for Kelsey, go ahead, pull the trigger, send him somewhere, get a draft pick, because I don't think you really lose much. He's obviously younger, so that's obviously where his value is going to be over our backup situation there in Philadelphia. But I agree with Adrian. I don't think he's necessarily a great fit. I don't think he's an awful center. I think he's a fine starting center in the NFL. He's obviously not like a Frederick or any of those elite level guys, but I think he's serviceable.
Yeah, he just needs to be on a team that fits his skill set. Same thing with Kendricks. It's like the same kind of argument there. So, and then the other guy in the hot seat, just Vinny Curry, the contract. I think we get that one. So there you go. Underrated. Who's underrated in Philly?
I like Nigel. I like both the linebackers. I like your guy you talked about too, Jordan Hicks. I like Nigel a lot too. I think both of them are underrated.
Okay, all right. So Jordan Hicks was going to be my guy. So I'm not going to. Okay, I got another one. Bo Allen. Bo Allen is a rotational defensive tackle that I essentially have never seen get pushed back. He holds the point of attack. He's very stout. He's very powerful. I think he's a really, really solid rotational defensive tackle for them. You could say the same thing about Destiny Vial as well. I mean, same kind of skill set there. The defensive line is so deep here in Philly. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, another one, I love him, and I know a lot of Eagles fans hate him. Brandon Graham's very underrated. Stop hating on Brandon Graham. He's a very good defensive end. Is he elite like some of the other guys? No, but he's a Pro Bowl level guy. He's very, very good.
I agree. Brandon Graham too. Fantasy guy.
Honestly, I don't know if there's really a great fantasy option here. And I say that not because I don't think anyone's going to be good.
Jeffrey's.
Yeah, I think Alshon's going to be drafted appropriately as a really high wide receiver 2, low wide receiver 1. I think that's fair, but I think he's going to get drafted as such. So I have a hard time saying like, oh yeah, he's definitely my fantasy guy to look out for. I think he'll get drafted appropriately. I think Ertz will get drafted appropriately, especially if you're in a PPR league. His value is much higher than it is in a traditional scoring league. Honestly, I might just say Darren Sproles. I mean, realistically, there's not many running backs you're going to get towards the end of your draft in larger leagues in a PPR league that are going to get you 50 receptions and probably 60 to 70 carries. You're not going to get many guys that late. Otherwise, you're taking flyers on guys like Jamal Charles at that point or some really late options. I'm fine with Darren Sproles. I don't think there's anyone that's really getting me excited for the fantasy situation there in Philadelphia. I think everyone's going to get drafted appropriately where they are.
I'll throw out a name. I'll say Wendell Smallwood. And the reason why I say this is from sources from inside the organization, they really, really like Wendell Smallwood. Now, I mean, you could pretty much see that. I don't need sources to tell you that. Fucking Sean Brace sources. But Wendell Smallwood, I think, is a guy, because LeGarrette Blount, if they're struggling to run the ball up the middle with the way the offensive line is, it's not really the strength to run up the middle. Smallwood's the guy that's going to go outside the tackles, and that's where the strength lies. So if LeGarrette Blount, if they're struggling and they kind of ditch that whole thing, him and Smallwood becomes your featured back, he's like that late round flyer that you might want to take a stab at.
That's fair. That's a very fair one. But I'll tell you this: if you're an Eagles fan, you sure as shit don't want that. And I mean, I say that because think about the defensive end standpoint. If you are play action and you're running a lot of outside zone, so a lot of stuff where the back is first step is lateral, which in turn means that your tackles, their first slide step is going to be outside. That in turn means that defensive end, his first step is going to be hard upfield. So for him, let's say it's play action. So we get back away, back going across. Tight end takes a hard slide step outside. Defensive end takes a hard step outside. It's pass. That changes nothing on the route the defensive end is taking from getting outside to him getting to the quarterback, unless you're backside away. If you're backside away, you're probably cut back. That's different. But if you're play side, whether the ball's coming to you in outside zone or it's play action, it's pass, it doesn't change anything. Now, if you're running the ball between the tackles and it's play action, so let's say we get power look, back coming straight downfield. If you're play side end, your first step is going to be inside now, coming more towards like the B gap. And now if you realize it's pass, now you have to spin back outside. That's a hard task for a D end. So for Carson Wentz's situation, you want to make sure that you can sell the play action inside, not outside. Because if you can sell it outside, that's fine. Better get the ball out quick because the D end hasn't changed his path.
Yeah. Brendan, guess what? We just did all 32 teams. Our NFL preview has finished. We have previewed all 32 teams in the NFL. And our last one was probably our longest.
Oh, without question. But it had to be. The Eagles had to be the longest one.
Yeah, it's funny because we saw how long we went on the Cowboys. We're like, oh, shit, 50 minutes? We just went 50 minutes on Dallas. So if we went less than 50 for the Eagles, I would have heard it from everybody.
No, I'm going to be honest with you. I think when people watch ours, they probably should take bathroom breaks and take some like water breaks in between because this one did get pretty lengthy. But you know what? We're thrilled, guys. We really do appreciate you taking the time to watch us do all 32 teams. It means a lot to us. Me and Adrian, we're going to talk more this week. We're going to try to figure out a good time and date because we want to do a full NFL preview as far as giving expectations for records for all teams so you can see it in one show. You can see who our expectations are for MVP, Rookie of the Year, all that good stuff. So, guys, we appreciate it. Thank you for sticking with us. Great show today, Adrian. Great job, my man.
Yep, and just some future things as well that we have in mind. As you can see, Brendan is a very, very intelligent football mind, and we are going to try and incorporate film studies somehow, film study shows. I don't know how we're going to do it because I've tried to show video on Google Hangouts before, and it lagged really bad. So I'm going to try to figure out a program, whether it's Zoom or whatever, where we can tape a show and break down some film for you guys, because that's something that no one else on YouTube is doing. And we're going to go do that just for you guys because we can.
I'm really excited about it, guys. Real excited about it.
There it is. For Brendan Albert, I'm Adrian Fedke. All 32 teams are complete. Eagles are not going to win the Super Bowl. Damn it.
Always next year. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.